You're not really seeing that many just full-on aggressive decks coming out anymore, but we'll have to wait and see what those decks are going to be looking at. But having seen the classes now, I'm going to ask you both for a prediction before we jump into this first game. Dan, we'll start with you. What do you think this series is going to look like?
3-2 to Cipher, actually, is what I'm going to go for. And I think it's just going to come down to that Hunter versus Warlock. And I think the Warlock's going to take it.
Okay.
I'm actually going to go the other way and say 3-2 to Jambre, and I would probably wager that Hunter may have the upper hand, unless it's Arena Luck, where potentially we might see things go a little bit awry.
It's just if it's that new kind of discard Zoolock, if it does get that start,
oh,
it
absolutely,
can be absolutely filthy.
And I don't know what type of Hunter he's running. If this is complete meme Hunter, which is, you know, that Hunter that runs Barnes, Yogg, one Savannah Highmane sometimes, then it can be kind of questionable how that performs in a lot of matchups. That is a really odd Hunter to try and predict how it's going to perform, because it really depends on the secrets that you draw. If you draw Barnes without drawing Yogg, if they have removal for Yogg. But, you know, if it is that meme Hunter, then Barnes comes down against the discard lock turn 4 and draws a Yogg into a Yogg. a Yasage. Sorry, a charge into a charge. Yeah. Then you end up, you know, almost instantaneously winning the game.
Last week, Jambre brought mid-range, so maybe he'll lean towards that again.
I would imagine.
We didn't see a Warlock from Cipher last week, but you never know. We'll see. I think mid-range rather than the Yasage. Someone brought Yasage last week, didn't they? It was
yes,
Ball Control.
It was Ball Control. Brought the Yasage.
He brought the meme deck.
Well, wait. My prediction as well. I'll just quickly throw one in there.
You're not
you guys just ignored me completely. I think I'm going to go with Cipher on this one, just purely for the experience, just for the experience of voting for Cipher. No, because of his personal experience, how long he's been playing. Like, I feel like his kind of knowledge of the scene, knowledge of all the other players as well. He's been around for so long. He's going to have kind of that almost advanced scouting in his favour, which is a weird way of looking at it, but that's why plan, and I'm going to stick to it.
All I'm saying is, given my predictions last week, you'd be a fool to bet against me.
Yeah, it's not quite the same League of Legends, though, is it, my friend? So.
I did well in the Hearthstone.
You did. I think. What did you get? 3 out of 4 last week?
3 out of 4. 3 out of 4. 2 out of 4 exact results. 3 out of 4 results.
Okay, well,
the game's starting.
We are going to jump into this first game here. Cipher versus Jambre, and it's going to be a Warrior Mirror to kick things off.
Wow.
By the looks of things, maybe similar decks.
So Jambre looks like he might be playing some sort of like Patron deck, but I know that Jackie Chan has been playing this kind of Enrage Warrior deck, so maybe that's going to be a thing.
It's
but
got Justicard True Heart.
It's definitely the Fatigue Warrior from Cipher's side, which
probably
includes Yogg nowadays as well, because, you know, if there's more than 5 spells, why not chuck Yogg in there?
Brawl, Justicard True Heart leans towards a control type deck coming out from Jambre as well. We could be in for a long one, boys. Resident Sleepers up in the chat, please.
Yeah, this is definitely going to be one that a fair few hero powers will be put out during these first few turns. And I think as well, one of the things that often comes in these kinds of matchups is just watching the players decide which cards they want to play purely so that they don't mill themselves.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be a decision here, is who's going to break first. I mean, you don't really want to drop that Acolyte of Pain. It's weird because you do want to draw the cards, but at the same time, you've got to be thinking about that fatigue game right at the end. One card being overdrawn or one card more than the other person can really change the end of the game there. So you can see now, Jambre, he just armored up, and now he is literally just going to rope out here. Even that he's frozen. Even though he is very good at musical statues.
Yeah, I feel like there might be a disconnect slightly here. Yeah, again, in this, I know we're seeing some hovering. Here we go. He's actually really just thinking. In this matchup, it essentially Justicard True Heart can be a swing card that just essentially can almost single-handedly give you the advantage in the game. And like Dan said, if they make the read that both of them are playing a control Fatigue Warrior, you are not going to be playing Acolyte of Pain anytime soon. Because you want to accelerate your win condition, which is, there's no point drawing cards, because you're not going to bring any win conditions out the bag.
And as well, I think in this matchup specifically, like, you drop Acolyte of Pain as a, okay, I need to buy time, I need to find more ways to get into the game. But in a control versus control matchup, you're really not too concerned about finding answers because you're filling your hand up over the course of the next few turns.
The main difference I think we're going to find in these decks is definitely that Bloodhoof Brave. You don't typically see that in many control kind of lineups at the moment. That Ironforge Portal is there as a turn 5 instead, so perhaps he's kind of changed that around. He's switched the turn 5 out for a turn 4, but...
Sure. We know that Cipher has got the answer in hand, right? But then you are using a Shield Slam on a target that may not necessarily appear immediately threatening in the form of this Bloodhoof Brave. So you're using removal, which could prove crucial towards the end of the game. I'll also be interested to see whether either of these guys run something like Elise, because Elise could be a huge win condition for them if they manage to get to that point.
Looking at Cipher's deck, and judging from what he played last week as well, he played this Fatigue Warrior last week. He should have Elise in it. This kind of style does have Elise in it. And
sure.
I wouldn't be surprised if Jambre has it as well. Like, if you're playing a Fatigue deck, I mean, Elise is going to be absolutely fantastic.
It is a win condition for your Fatigue deck. We are going to see a coin Justicar Trueheart here.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Ken, I probably should have noticed that, is going to be lead towards the Enzoth Warrior.
Sure.
For Cipher, so it isn't necessarily that kind of Fatigue Yogg, it is going to be Enzoth Warrior.
But one of the questions is, if you do end up against this kind of Fatigue Warrior, and you are running a different style of deck, like, which one would you say that favours? Because that kind of changes the matchup pretty significantly. The Enzoth Warrior obviously has a much more clear win condition of, I am going to get your health bar to 0 without milling.
So he's actually got 2 brawls in hand here for Jambre, as does Cipher, to be honest. So the interesting thing for me is that actually this has already given Jambre outs following Enzoth now, and he knows he's going to be holding on to one. Seeing Ken gives you some sort of indication that it's probably not a traditional... I mean, Ken is running a lot of decks right now, even without Enzoth, but you probably have to have in the back of your mind, having seen the Ken already, that Enzoth could be a possibility. And look at this, Jambre not wanting to waste any of his removal on a 4-5 and a 3-4 right now.
Yeah, I don't think he's expecting this board to build up too much, so I don't think he will have to use a brawl on it. Like you say, he's definitely going to want to save one of those brawls. Fiery War Axe coming out means he can
bash Fiery War Axe.
Yeah, he has got options to do some sort of removal. And the Ironforge Portal is a strange one for me, because there are some really terrible 4-drops that you can get, but there are some decent ones as well. And with a board like this, I don't think you're losing too much by going down that kind of route, but he's definitely going to equip the War Axe, and he's looking like he wants to remove something off the board.
Now, do you use Bash, or he's thinking about using Flesh-Eating Ghoul and going directly? Okay, right, that's a play that I wasn't totally considering, because sometimes I like to keep Blood Verika for Execute, but this allows him to armor up, or tank up rather, as well, and also gives a board that contests this 3-2 quite nicely. The only issue is now that Cipher has a value trade that he has available, which is into that 3-2.
And I think essentially what they're trying to do at the moment is trying to get as much removal out of their opponent. They're just saying, look, I'm going to put stuff on the board, I'm going to make you use your removal, so then when I get the big things, you're not going to have the removal for it. And I think Cipher will definitely want to be enticing those brawls.
That's another pretty terrible 4-drop, really. But 4-4, it's almost Yeti, so you're almost at the standard value 4-drop, really.
You're almost a basic card.
You're almost a basic card. That Slam's pretty good, but you don't really want to draw cards, so he's going to go for the 3-on-1, which I think makes a lot more sense.
Definitely. I mean, I can't hover over it. The kind of cards on each of the side, but neither of these players have been wanting to draw using any draw mechanics actually so far. They've been happy with what they're just drawing naturally.
That's an awful 4-drop Munchables from the Ironforge Portal, because it's dealt with by just the Fiery War Axe.
Justicar off the top for Cipher is good though.
Oh, absolutely.
Because now he can start armoring up as well, and he already had an armor advantage over Jambre, despite Jambre getting that Justicar beforehand. Wow!
Huh.
Whoa.
Well, I suppose that's one way to go. I suppose if you're in that kind of matchup and you're going to be looking to try and fatigue your opponent, if you already lose that armor advantage and you've lost board control as well...
What just happened?
That tells me that he didn't have Elise, right?
I mean, what that spells out to me is that was his singular win condition, right? Was to stay ahead in life total, to stay ahead and look towards
Why would you build a Fatigue Warrior deck with that sole win condition? Like, always add something else in. Like, the fact that he literally gave up then because he had the tools to deal with the board state and double brawl, right? The fact that he did that has told me that he doesn't run Elise.
You know when people get to the end game and they start trying to count fatigue and it's really hard? Maybe Jambre is just thinking so far ahead and he is so good with maths. He was like, right, okay, so this card. And he was like, nope, can't win it.
It's like that GIF with all the numbers and equations and things flying around his head. Well, a quick first control matchup, which is something that I don't think I've ever said before. But Cipher is going to take the lead now, 1-0, and and even the Crazed Alchemist tech in.
Yeah, absolutely. But we have the Fiery Win X for Jambre, so he's going to have a good early start. He's also got Ravaging Ghoul, which is fantastic here against the Warlock, so
The Crazed Alchemist could come into play for that Bloodhoof Brave that we saw
Is it
as well.
discard lock, though? He's got Soulfire. This could just be that aggressive variant of Zoo, or it could actually be discard lock.
Well, I mean, all of the cards that Cipher has, aside from the Crazed Alchemist, are discard lock, like standard cards. So maybe it's just a tech into the discard lock as well.
Soulfire was in, like you said, it was in Zoo before the discard lock anyway.
Yeah, there's so many blurred lines between what you do and don't see in these particular decks.
I think I wouldn't be too unhappy if he was just running the kind of traditional Zoo. I mean, I've seen players that are on ladder just running the old Face Shaman and they got to like rank 2 Legend because it still works. These old decks, I know there's these new formats, this discard lock, but I think that the kind of traditional Zoo is still perfectly viable. It's something that they've played for years and they know how it works.
For sure.
Well, I think the Defender of Argus as well kind of spells out that this is going to be that traditional Zoo. You don't ever see that really in the new versions, so curious to see how this one's going to play out and how Jambre decides to deal with that. Because, like, having seen the board state at this point, if you're Jambre, do you look at that and say, okay, this isn't discard lock, this is going to be typical Zoo?
I don't think you can read it just yet, and I don't think it matters either way. I mean, the only thing Jambre will be thinking is, alright, he hasn't got a ridiculous start with the discards, or something like that. He's got Ravaging Ghoul, he's got Revenge, he's got Brawl, he has plenty of tools to start dealing with a kind of a Zoo board.
Sure.
But that Argus doesn't help things, that is the only issue.
So, here, I imagine the best option would be Shield Block to see what you draw, because really the Ravaging Ghoul that it does his contest board, you kind of want to feel like you get more value out of that. Plus it buys you some time, so...
Yep, I think Shield Block is perfectly acceptable. He does have the Slam as well, so that's going to be good for later, especially if that Dark Shield Councilman comes down.
For sure.
He's got an easy way to deal with it. Or at least if he can get the armor. I mean, he's going to lose 4 next turn.
He's going to tap, though, and probably just play Councilman off the top. Oh, yeah, okay, this is super traditional Zoo, because he's even got Dark Iron Dwarf in there as well.
And I like this from Cipher. I mean, so last week he lost 2 games with Rogue, and he's probably looked at his lineups and said, look, what can I change? Let's just go back to what I know. Let's go back to what I can win with, what I have won with in the past. I mean, he won plenty of Zoo games at the finals.
Yeah. I think as well, one of the things about this more traditional Zoo lineup, comparatively to the discard lock, is it's much more reliable. It's much more just, you know exactly where you stand with the hand that you get. You know exactly the order that you're going to play things. And with the discard lock, sometimes you have to end up sacrificing major parts of your win condition.
Do you know what worries me more about Jambre conceding last game? He has Yogg-Saron in this deck.
Yeah.
I mean, he could have just waited and Yogg could have won him the game. That's how things work.
I mean, you weren't at any threat of dying within the next 10 turns, really, with double Brawl in the hand as well, so...
Yeah, I've got to say, it was a very interesting decision to just concede on the spot. I'm sure Jambre
maybe he's got to go for dinner
good
later.
Reason. Maybe there's a... Oh, yeah, maybe.
I think Brawl's fine here, because you kind of want to get rid of the in-gang boss, because it really throws a spanner in the works for your flesh-eating ghoul, so...
Ravaging Ghoul? I mean, it might be flesh-eating. I don't know.
No, it is I always say this, you know. I always get confused between the two.
I like Slam onto the 2-3 here.
Doesn't that spell that you've got Ravaging Ghoul next turn, though? So I kind of like holding on to it, because you have the mana to play Revenge, Slam, Ravaging Ghoul as well, so...
Yep.
So far, Cipher Zoo not really able to get out of control.
Double Fire Aurochs will do that to you.
We've not seen anything too crazy, though. We've not seen any Sea Giants or anything like that, so no tells of what the late game looks like for this deck from Cipher.
I wonder whether Cipher is going to play around the life total for Revenge as well. Obviously, when you drop below, I think it's 12 off the top of my head, Revenge deals 3 rather than 1. And you can get to that 12 life total, and then you can still armor up, so you can still use Revenge for 3.
I feel like Slam, Revenge, Ravaging Ghoul is just too good here not to play.
Yeah, completely clear the board for yourself, and you even get rid of the Death Rattle on top of it. So I think Jambre is going to be more than happy to jump on that opportunity.
There is just so much ways for Jambre to kind of deal with any board that Cipher puts down. I mean, even that Yogg-Saron at turn 10 is traditionally a way to deal with a board. So he's looking in good shape right now. He can even drop Grommash to start putting his own threats on the board. Gorehowl as well, fantastic to clear a board. So this isn't looking too great for Cipher. And now he gets... he picks up a card that's going to be for a discard lock, but it's not going to be much use in this deck. Except for that Soulfire.
Yeah, for
sure.
And it means he can get rid of Possessed Villager, which isn't going to be a huge impact card at the moment. And he gets a card back in hand.
Let's see what he is going to be able to draw off the back of that. And it's going to be Abusive Sergeant. So, I mean, this is one of the issues that I think traditional Zoo always had, was if you do fall behind and you can't build up that board, it starts to get very difficult when you're tapping every turn, but you're just getting like 2 1-drops per turn. You just run out of steam so quickly at that stage.
Do you know what I might have preferred in that situation? Playing Gromash. Just going Grom straight into the 4-4.
I think his reasoning for keeping it is probably
for
that...
a finisher.
The Warlock's going to keep tapping, right?
Yeah.
So he's got that chance to just deal that 10 damage straight off.
How much damage is he going to have? 10 plus. He's going to have 16 next turn, so...
So he's going to be able to use this second Revenge now to clear the whole board.
Yeah.
Because he's going to... Oh, yeah, I was going to say, he's going to drop below that total.
And Cipher not in the position to play around it. So he's going to slam and Revenge, and I think that'll be good night for Cypher's Warlock, to be honest.
But he could have not hit with that Imp, and then he would have been on 13 health.
And he still would have been potentially threatening lethal next turn with the 2 draws.
I think it still would have been challenging to threaten lethal properly because, you know, there's a lot of ways for this deck to gain armor. He had a bash in hand, he had armor up as well. That's 5 armor immediately. It would have still been a tall order to get that 18 damage down with just those 5 minions on board.
For sure.
Okay, so Sea Giant is a threat.
But he's dead next turn anyway.
Well, but he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're wanting to draw something out of your deck, Sea Giant's not too bad.
I mean, you can drop Sea Giant now, or you can tap and hope that you get some sort of taunt, which I think you've used 2 Void Walkers now, and I don't think you have anything left in your deck that's going to represent a taunt, so it's probably the best line of play to just go for the Sea Giant off the top, but we know, as you can see.
Yeah, we'll be able to finish him off with the Gromash and the Gore Howl, and that is going to be the end of that next game. Jambre evening things up 1 apiece now, as Cipher, unfortunately, unable to really take control of the board and unable to really use that traditional Zoo lock to its full effect. And that means we are going to be moving into the 3rd match neck and neck. So, interesting way that this is panning out. Jambre does actually get the game out of the way with the Control Warrior as well, which I think is quite an important factor, because losing twice with the same deck, I think, just hurts your morale so much. It makes it like, do I continue to play that deck? Do I just roll the dice and pick a different deck at random? Like, do you try and just keep getting that out of the way? But he's kind of eliminated all of those decisions.
I mean, and it happened to both of these guys last week. They both lost 2 in a row, and then they had to come back, win 2 more, and then lost 3-2, and that's just even more heartbreaking. But both Warrior, they're out now. They both got those wins, so I think that Jambre will be more than happy with that concede now. He won't really care. He'll be like, okay, we've got it back to an even slate now. But Jambre has that read that it is that kind of traditional Zoo lock.
Yeah, it was a favoured matchup for the Control Warrior, especially the Control variant that Jambre was running, plus drawing 2 Fiery War Axes in your first 5 cards.
And Revenges and Ravaging Brawl and Brawls.
You're going to win against the Zoolock. So it was, I think, given the cards, it was a predicted outcome for Jambre. He played it well. The only potential change in play could have been Cipher trying to play around the Revenge total and maybe hoping for some sort of power overwhelming or charge the following turn to search for lethal if you couldn't get it clear, because obviously you can't play around cards in your opponent's hand when you have no cards in your hand anyway.
Is this a Beast Druid that we're seeing out of Jambre? Enchanted Raven going to be coming on through.
And actually, I mean, Beast Druid against, well, this looks like probably Malygos Druid. I think Cipher brought that last week, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's brought it again. It might be the token variant, I don't know. But anything that can get a lot on board to start with against this Druid can kind of steamroll out of... It can just go out of control.
You can see Cypher's face. I was almost like that when I saw Enchanted Raven being played. I was like, I kind of like this card, but I don't like it that much. It's a really good activator for your Mark of Ishaj, but...
when it was announced, I thought it was the best card that has ever been announced by Blizzard, but it's just not really... Beast Druid hasn't taken off the way everyone thought it was going to take off. Everyone thought it was going to be crazy, especially Menagerie Warden as well. But it just hasn't. It's not picked up. Token Druid and Malygos Druid are just too good right now.
Cipher is kicking himself for throwing away that Living Roots, by the way. He had that in his hand and he got rid of it. He's going to go for the accelerated growth here through the Wild Growth, because next turn he can innovate Nourish.
Ooh. Just get even more mana. Oh, that's nice.
He was thinking.
He was already hovering over it. I like Mark of the Asraj here.
Yeah. I think just going for the mark, like you play into like having a beefier minion on the board, it suddenly makes it like, okay, we're now out of range of Wrath, so you either swipe or you don't get rid of my minion.
It's got an Innovate as well.
Innovate as well.
Threw the Saber onto the board.
And you're not exactly playing directly into swipe either, because he's coin Wild Growth, so it's still 3 mana. You have to. Feral Rage is a great pickup here.
But does he go aggressive and take? Okay, yeah, he goes aggressive, takes the 4/4 down. I think that's right. Obviously, he had the option of taking the 8 armor instead and maybe taking 2 hits from it. But where else? You haven't got any other removal, so I think you have to kind of do that right now.
Yeah, Jambre is just going to have to go for this. But the question is, do you attack with your 3/2?
This is what I was thinking. Yeah.
Or do you save it for Mark of the Wild, for Power of the Wild?
It's clearly the decision that he's going over in his head right now. I like not attacking, but looking at the life total already of Cipher, you're putting so much pressure. And there's another Innovate, which is just doing nothing.
He's going to Innovate into Nourish here. Is he going to search for answers, or is he going to go straight for the ramp? He's searching for answers.
Yeah.
None of which directly help him.
No answers found. None today.
I mean, he finds another Nourish, so at least he gets a second opportunity.
And potentially there is
Claw.
a lot of damage next turn.
Yeah, that's putting pressure on for sure, and there isn't an immediate response here for Cipher.
He does still have a turn. Obviously, it's 5 mana to do the full Savage Roar Power of the Wild combo, and it's only going to be turn 4 next for Jambre. Jambre? Jambre?
Jambre.
Jambre?
Have we decided how we're going to say it? Because I've been saying Jambre, being quite pompous about it.
Jambre. Mark of the Wild's not bad. I wouldn't mind just Mark of the Wild and dealing with Blood Mage Thalnos here.
Would you ever have considered...
Thanks, Innkeeper.
In case anyone in Twitch chat did not know, when a minion has stealth, it cannot be taunted.
Cheers, Innkeeper.
Great news. Well, at least we
learned something
We're teaching
today.
you guys at home all about Hearthstone. But so what do we do then if we're Cipher right now? Obviously, you could just drop Azure Drake, but you don't really deal with what's going on the board. There's a Claw in hand, obviously, from the Raven Idol before. There's even an Arcane Giant available, but it all feels very slow.
Yeah.
He's thinking about Nourish, and that scares me.
I almost feel like you either drop Fandral to scare him, or drop Azure Drake to try and contest this 5/4. Or you just drop Arcane Giant, which does better.
I think if he knows the kind of what Beast Druid has, I mean, Beast Druid doesn't typically have anything to remove big threats. It doesn't really run mulches, so he's thinking, right, okay, if I put an Arcane Giant on the board, at least it can deal with multiple minions.
That's not bad.
Can't deal with stealths, though.
Because if he goes face, then he has lethal next turn with Power of the Wild and Savage Roar.
Yeah, that is a fantastic draw. For Jambre? Le Jam? Le Jam? Do we feel like Le Jam?
Thanks for that, Dan. Solid input, as always.
Yeah.
I like Le Jam.
I mean, especially on toast.
Exactly.
So we aren't even at, because he chose not to ramp, and because obviously he went for the card draw, we aren't actually threatening towards Ancient of War turn. So I think Jambre knows there's not many ways that he is going to be in a situation where he's going to get outdone. That's 11 damage. Has Jambre got that in hand?
I think he has 10.
I think he has 10
you
as
are
well.
Correct.
Does.
Violet Teacher in Power of the Wild, though, is an option for him right now. Let's go for that instead of the Savage Roar, but...
I actually prefer that Munchables, because, for this particular reason, if he does that, then you aren't exposing your 5/5, which could be obviously a real issue. And then you could search for lethal with Savage Roar the following turn if you get 1 extra damage from somewhere.
I think what he's... Yeah, I think that's the kind of safest play. You could just Savage Roar and make him kind of one-off. But is he even just going to leave and not attack with this Tiger? Yeah.
So next turn he can add the extra 1 damage through his hero power alongside Power of the Wild and Savage Roar, which means that he's not too worried about him using, or Cipher using his hero power, because he will have 11 damage next turn. The issue now for Cipher is he can't threaten lethal right now. And he doesn't have any taunts. What is he doing? He's got how much damage has he got in hand? He's got 14. He's got 12 on board plus 15 plus plus 5 plus 8, which is 20. That's the maximum damage he can do, 21 including hero power. 23 actually, because then you count Moonfire. So 23 damage I think Cipher's got from hand.
Yeah, but I think he has to nourish and has to...
Yeah.
He has to be thinking, look, he's had those 2 guards. One of them's probably going to be Power of the Wild. I mean, he might be considering Savage Roar as well, so he needs to search for some sort of answer.
There's the answer he wanted a long time ago.
Yeah. There are no answers there, and that will be enough for Jambre.
That will indeed. He was also not taking the extra hero power here.
Yeah, so didn't get that extra point of armor. And with the Power of the Wild, as well as the Savage Roar, that puts him up to
double Savage Roar.
And there it is.
So for the first time ever, Jambre is going to be ahead in the UK Premiership, in the UK Premiership Series. And as usual, Cipher is behind at the start of the season.
Well, it's not over just yet. It will only be 2-1. So Cipher still has opportunity to get himself back into this series. But Jambre, he's taken the lead. He's looking to prove himself here at the Premiership. He didn't have the greatest of first weeks. I believe he was up against Mysterious and struggled against that Reno lock that Mysterious brought to the lineup. This time, he's having a little bit of a better time at it and managing to prove the Beast Druid's effectiveness. And I think it was starting to get to the point at the end there where he ran into the classic Beast Druid problem of, I've used all of my threats and now I'm just praying that I draw the right thing, right? I've run out of things to just continue to follow up the aggression. And luckily, I think he played around his stealth incredibly well that game.
Yeah, I think Cipher will be kicking himself a little bit because he threw away some cards at the start which could have dealt with the aggro, but you just wouldn't expect it. No one is really playing Beast Druid, so that's fantastic from Jambre to kind of make that decision, taking that risk.
Exactly right. You mulligan expecting another Yogg Malagos Druid going up against you, so why would you want Living Roots? You're not that bothered about it. You want to save it for combo at some point. No one has brought Beast Druid to a competition in a while because, strictly speaking, against every matchup, Yogg Malagos Druid is just better. So this is Jambre basically stacking his lineup specifically to deal with the opposing Druid being Yogg Malagos, because then he can play Beast Druid, which, if it gets rolling, is a little bit like a mid-range hunter to a Malagos Druid. It's hard to deal with just these big, heavy mid-range threats coming down all the time. And so, yeah, he played incredibly well. He was very lucky he didn't run into an Ancient of War, but again, there was some ramping decisions and things, and Cipher knew that he needed to search for answers, so he didn't ramp up towards Ancient of War as quickly as he could have done. Even then, he would have had to cycle far more of his deck to even get to Ancient of War. So,
it's the meme.
It's the meme hunter.
But he's drawn the Arcerage at the start, and now we actually saw Ball Control win without the kind of Barnes of the Arcerage last time.
Oh, that is really tough for Jambre. He's lost both of his snipes.
Yeah, and that's going to mean, especially against a Zoolock, you lose a lot of that immediate just congestion of the board, I suppose. For sure, especially that we know that Cipher runs something like a Dark Iron Dwarf, so that can be game swinging versus something like a Dark Iron Dwarf. And the Imp Gang Bosses as well just removes that immediate threat, that I guess ability to just threaten sheer power on the board.
It's alright though, because if he gets to turn 10, he can draw a Barnes from the Archer.
Well, that's what you want.
And that's the right way round, of course. And for those of you who don't know, this deck is just made around Barnes on turn 4 or 3 if you have the coin.
Yeah.
To draw that big minion and just put on so much early presence that your opponent can't really deal with it. But unfortunately, he's drawn it the wrong way round.
You do have other win conditions, however. There are other win conditions. You do have Power of the Wilds. He's going to go for Deadly Shot, which scores him an ace. That was a 50-50 chance to keep himself in the game, to be completely honest. Yeah. And he scores it. So
you are right. The Call of the Wilds turn 8 can really change it. It can still keep you in the game. It's such a powerful card. I mean, like I said, last week Ball Control played this deck, and he had, at one point he had 4 secrets on the board, and Green Sheep just couldn't do anything. He couldn't even attack because he just knew it would play into the hands of the Eagle Horn Bow.
The funny thing is about this particular Druid deck, it's almost like Secret Paladin, but worse, because all the hunted secrets rather are more impactful, I would say, in general, than the Paladin secrets. So you have a real difficult time figuring out what to play around.
Explosive Trap's actually really important in this matchup. He needs to now deal with the board appropriately and make sure that he can get that Explosive Trap off at a very valuable time.
What's also interesting is almost everything in Cipher's hand is vulnerable to explosive trap. Now that he's got Malcazar's imp, that's a little bit easier, but
yeah, and obviously he's got the Argent Squire and the Villager, but it always feels just a little bit. It leaves a sour taste in your mouth when, even though a couple of minions survive, they're both just 1/1s. It's still you feel like you basically don't have a board regardless.
And again, turn 10, Ishaj technically is a win condition by himself. I mean, you're still sticking a 10/10 minion on board if you make it to turn 10, so.
And let's be honest, Zoo doesn't have that many ways of dealing with a 10/10 on the board.
Not really, you're right. You could have
unless you happen to have 2 Soul Fires and a Power Overwhelming in hand.
Yeah, or you took Corruption from a Dark Peddler.
That is true, yeah.
He's going to go with freezing. That's I guess he thinks there's not many targets I'm actually going to end up freezing for value anyway in this particular matchup, so I might as well just take the free bow charge. And also very good sequencing, because I think regardless that means explosive trap's going to proc first.
Well, it will mean that one of these 1/1s can use its lifeline and then get sent back to hand. Although I suppose that only matters for the Argent Squires. The Shadow Beast would go back to hand. But I'm interested to see how Cipher is actually going to play this turn. He knows, or he very likely knows, that one of these is going to be explosive trap at this point. Yes. Or he'll be at very least suspicious.
Yeah, for sure. He's got Argus though. This is the thing. Do you bother attacking this turn knowing that you've got Argus in hand next turn?
The trouble is with how his minions are placed.
Yeah.
Very true.
He can't make the most out of Argus. I mean, he can buff one of the
Power Shot's pretty good.
Power Shot plus Cat Trick. I mean, what do you Power Shot? The Argent Squire?
The Argent Squire, for sure,
then,
I'd say. Yeah.
Then it means that Explosive Trap gets rid of everything, if there is an attack.
And actually now
you can't do anything with that Defender of Argus.
Except for keep his Dark Peddler alive, but even then that dies to, or that won't get through freezing trap regardless.
But I guess if you want anything back, Dark Peddler's not too bad.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
He's going to commit to that, and we'll see the attack come on through. Explosive Trap obviously goes first. Does he attack now with the Peddler and go for another 1-drop afterwards? That's going to be one of the questions.
It depends what he wants to return. If he values getting the Argus back next turn, but it is whether it's going to survive, he doesn't really know. This Call of the Wild turn 8 is actually going to be pretty ugly for Cipher.
I actually think not attacking would have been the better course of action for me, personally.
Look for the Argus, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think especially specifically against this deck, he already knows it's this deck at this stage, so I think you're aware that there's not really that many threats in the deck to finish off that Argus.
What I like about Cat Trick is that, especially in this matchup, Warlock traditionally doesn't run that many spells. So for a while, Cipher is going to have to play the guessing game of what this secret is going to be. He's going to attack and be like, okay,
especially with no minions
now
on board.
Do I know what it is? He's just going to be worried about it. But now, especially, he just kill commands that as well. So
he knows he's not freezing then.
So he's going to be thinking about Snipe.
Yeah, he's going to be thinking about Snipe. He knows it's not freezing because there would have been... If that was freezing, then he wouldn't have taken that off. If that was freezing, then he would have taken it off the board. Actually, no, that's the point.
No, I was
that's
about
the point.
to say, this is reverse logic right here.
Literally the other way round, sorry, yeah. And he was thinking about Snipe, that's why he played the Abusive Sergeant first. So now he's making him think it's freezing. Sorry, that's completely my bad. I was talking absolute rubbish. As per.
I knew what you meant. Don't worry, I'm with you. So now next turn he'll probably attack first with that Argus. But
it doesn't matter.
Call of the Wild. If Jambre does manage to win this game without the kind of the meme, then that is twice that we've seen last week and this week where Yasraj hasn't even come into question. And I think Lorinda was saying it last week that this deck has to be started to considered now as a really viable and good deck. And it is scary. Because if it can win without its just crazy turn 4 option, then I really fear this deck becoming a very popular choice.
So I
especially in Conquest.
This time specifically, I think it's very likely we do see Yasraj come into play, whether it's for that 1/1 copy or whether it's just as a turn 10 drop. Always Huffer is the rule.
You just go face.
It's going to come on through.
Yeah, you just go face now, especially with those. Oh no, okay, really? You're gonna play it safe. I don't mind playing it safe either.
He's got a 10/10, hasn't he? Next
he's
turn.
Got a 10/10. Forbidden Ritual proc Catrick, and that would be one-off lethal.
Yeah.
It depends if he procs Bear Trap. If he procs Bear Trap...
Now, what do you go for here? I'd say probably Soulfire.
He's going to Stone Toss Spore. He's really, really considering Catrick at this point in time.
He's going to have to use this Alchemist here just to try and take this Leok off.
Because he's going to use Alchemist and then Argent Squire into Leok, and then they'll... That was a good choice of the Stone Toss Spore, actually, also playing around Catrick. Very clever play from Cipher.
Yeah. And that's going to mean that he is still in this game for another turn.
Until his charge hits the board.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be your Sarge versus plus Barnes, right? Because Barnes still hasn't been pulled, so that's the only minion left in his deck. So he's going to get a 3/4 as well.
And I think Cipher at that point is like, well, I don't have many answers for a 10-10, unfortunately.
And there is Barnes, the other way round.
You've done it the wrong way, Jambre. Yeah. But you've still won.
I think Jambre can't really believe that either. No. By the look of his face right there, he was like, well, that's not really how it's meant to work, but I guess we'll roll with it.
So the Voidwalker can keep him alive temporarily.
You don't want to play Voidwalker at this point in time. There goes the Bear Trap.
There we have it, Jambre. Going to be able to take this entire series now. 3-1 is the score, and Cipher unfortunately losing out. Kiernan has the biggest grin on his face, and I believe that might be relevant to predictions.
I wasn't correct on the score, boys, but I've got to say, I was
looking at you, and then I just turned around and just saw.
I'm sorry, I was smug last week as well. Only for like the short 3 seconds following a series, but I feel like I almost deserve it.
You do deserve it.
Thanks, babe.
Well, you did it. You predicted it right, and that is going to be Jambre walking away with this one. 3-1, a much more convincing performance than what we saw last week, but still running the fairly unorthodox decks. Obviously, last week it was the Paladin. This week, going for Beast Druid, and that, I guess, Meme Hunter. I don't even know what to call it other than that, but it's... I don't know. I'm impressed that he's able to get this success with these kinds of decks.
And he's making a statement, right? Cipher finished second last season, and he said, okay, I'm going to beat your runner-up. I'm the new boy in this kind of Premiership, and I'm going to put some wins on the board. So it's very impressive, and I like the deck choices. Very confident.
Do you know what's really interesting about Cipher? And I noticed it at the start of last season as well. He does not adapt quickly to metas. I mean, I think what he plays is fine, but at some point, like halfway through last season, he was still playing traditional ramp druid, like full-on taunt ramp druid, which had kind of fallen out of popularity over the recent months before season 1 of our Hearthstone ESL Premiership. So he's kind of doing the same here, like traditional zoo, not really full discard zoo. It's still popular, but not quite as popular as the new discard zoo. It just feels like Cipher is kind of trailing ever so slightly again in terms of his deck choices. Whereas you're seeing, especially people like Ball Control, a lot of the Torpedo GG members, they are accelerating new meta picks. Everything that seems good right now, they are bringing it to the tournament. And most of them are performing pretty admirably. You know, this is now Torpedo GG. If they win all of their games with their respective players this week, then they end up, what, like 5 out of 6? In the last 2 weeks in terms of wins over series. So that's pretty good for the organisation that obviously work together in terms of deck choices.
Yeah, they're doing fantastically so far. And actually, we're going to see a couple of... I was going to say